We are, all of us, in possession of a powerful and transcendent creativity machine, our amazing human brains. Creativity is defined as the ability to combine diverse elements into novel and original ideas or products that are in some way useful or adaptive. Creativity is not a single process, but a set of complex stages and cognitive mechanisms, and our brains are built for this task. Think about it. All of the marvels of human ingenuity, from transcontinental railway systems, to rockets to the moon, to life-saving medicines, to the uplifting strains of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, to fashion magazines, and referring back to James' talk, even the recipe for bacon-wrapped cheese sandwiches, all of these began as a seed of an idea in a human brain just like ours. I study creativity and our amazing neural machines. 20 years of research has convinced me that we all have remarkable creativity potential. But there's a gap between the potential and our reality. Many, I'm afraid, have bought into the idea that there are creative people and uncreative people, and for one reason or another, they've put themselves in the second category and simply left all creative endeavor to others. One of my goals as a researcher and also a world-class appreciator of that vast cornucopia of human creativity products is to narrow that gap and to broaden the perspective of those who have blocked their innate creative ability. To that end, two different advances, recent, have shaped my research. First, neuroimaging techniques have allowed us to peek inside the brains of highly creative individuals. What we see is, barring serious brain injury, we all have similar brain structures. It's the activation of those structures and the networks they form that distinguish high creative individuals from those who are less so. Now, granted, there are some genetic influences, but second, research in the fields of cognitive rehabilitation, cognitive behavioral therapy, and neurofeedback have shown us that we can alter and influence our brain activation systems. We can change our brains and alter our brain activation patterns. This is really a great time in history to have a brain. Now, combining those two areas of research brings me to what I want to talk about today. One, highly creative people activate their brains in certain patterns when they're engaged in creative work. And second, if we can learn to imitate those brain activation patterns of highly creative people, we can enhance our own creativity. And by doing so, we can enrich our lives and the lives of those around us. I talk about brain activation patterns as brain sets because brain sets are really the biological equivalent of different mindsets. Just as different mindsets affect the way you see the world, different brain sets affect your perception, the memories you call to mind, and even the way you solve problems. So what brain sets of highly creative people might influence our creative process? Let's look briefly at a set of 7 brain sets that I feel embody the most salient mental aspects of human creativity. And I call this the CREATES brain set model. It's based on neuroscience research from our lab and from labs around the world, as well as my interviews with over 400 creative achievers and biographical information from creative luminaries, both past and present. So you can think of this brain sets model as sort of a quick start guide to your own creativity machine. And we'll start by looking at the brain set that I call the reason brain set. Certainly a state that is very important to us as human thinkers. It's a state of focused attention in which we are processing consciously information in our working memory in order to solve problems, to make decisions, and to set goals. All goals that are very important in the creative process. This state is characterized by activation of what's called the executive control network in the brain, where lateral aspects of the prefrontal cortex are highly active. These are called the executive centers of the brain. Using much of the same circuitry, the evaluate brain set is an even more focused state of attention. Here, creative ideas that we've generated can be judged and screened for relevance and appropriateness. There's certainly a place for evaluation in the creative process, but be warned that judgmental states of brain are poisonous to creative idea generation. And what we found is that highly creative people tend not to spend very much time in the evaluate brain set. Instead, they prefer a set of brain activation states that are characterized by the activation of what's called the default mode network of the brain. Now you can see in this graphic that this is characterized by activation of centerline structures in the brain, and the volume on the executive control areas on the side of the brain are turned down. Brain sets that are associated with creative idea generation are also characterized by a state called cognitive disinhibition. In cognitive disinhibition, you are aware of information that is ordinarily screened out of conscious awareness by a set of automatic filtering mechanisms. These filtering mechanisms are important and necessary to keep us from being overwhelmed by the vast amount of stimuli that our brains process in a given instant. But research in our lab and in other labs indicates that highly creative people prefer states of cognitive disinhibition, and also that their filters, these filtering mechanisms, are somewhat looser and more porous. The loose filters of cognitive disinhibition allow more information into conscious awareness that can provide content for novel and original ideas. So 3 brain sets are associated with the generation of creative ideas, and let's look at them individually. The first is the absorb brain set, which is a state of defocused attention and cognitive disinhibition in which your mind is open to new experiences and ideas. Imaging research suggests that this is the gateway to those aha moments, those moments of cognitive inspiration that may feel like they come out of the blue, or even that they're coming from somewhere outside of ourselves. William Blake, the visionary poet, believed that his ideas came to him from visiting spirits that were jostling him to get his attention. A subject in one of our studies, a prominent songwriter, believed that the songs she composed were actually written by the angels, and she received them by sticking up some sort of antenna in her brain to pull them in. Now, the reason these creative inspirations feel so foreign is because they're being developed below the level of conscious awareness and only feed forward into consciousness during moments of cognitive disinhibition. If you don't spend much time in the absorb brain set, it's likely that many potential ideas will simply fade away without ever having reached the threshold that would push them into conscious thought. So how can we get into this absorbed brain state? There are several evidence-based ways. One is to practice openness meditation. As you practice openness, allowing your thoughts, your emotions, and your sensations into awareness and observe them non-judgmentally, it increases your ability to enter this brain set. For instance, right now, take a deep breath and become aware of where your feet are touching the floor. Become aware of all the places where your body is touching the seat. And become aware of all the places where your clothing is touching your body. And now, become aware of what you can hear other than my voice. As we open up to sensations, we're loosening those cognitive filters. Another way to enter the absorbed brain state is by walking in places of natural beauty. Many creative insights have occurred as people walk in nature. As you walk in nature, you are surrounded, you're bombarded by sensory stimuli on all sides. And this defocuses the attention and disinhibits cognition. And by the way, when you're in the shower, you're also being bombarded by stimuli on all sides, which is why I believe that we come up with so many good ideas there. Another state that allows you to generate creative ideas is what I call the connect brain set. And this is a state of divergent thinking where you're able to generate multiple solutions to a problem by making connections between remotely associated bits of information. This is a great state to be in when you're brainstorming. One way that research indicates we can reliably enter this state is through elevating our mood. As your mood becomes more positive, your attention broadens and it becomes easier to think divergently and creatively and generate more ideas. So to this end, I recommend that you make a list of things that reliably elevate your mood and brighten your day, like shopping. Now, if buying that new pair of shoes or that new golf club happens to be an item on this list, remember that you can just tell your partner, hey, I'm buying it to enhance my creativity. The final brain set that's associated with creative idea generation is the Envision Brain set, a state that's devoted to mental imagery. This also, by the way, activates much of the mental circuitry that's associated with actual vision. The ability to see in the mind's eye what does not yet exist is a hallmark of creative thought, as Michelangelo and Einstein have both attested. Vivid mental imagery is a skill that can be enhanced through practice. And one of my favorite exercises for practicing it is this. Take yourself mentally to a place where you've experienced serenity in the past. This could be a quiet forest or perhaps a beach. And see, hear, feel, and smell all that is around you. Do this for several minutes each day, adding more and more detail to the experience. And this will not only enhance your ability to visualize, it will also give you a mini mental vacation. The transformed brain set is a state of inner focus where you transform negative emotions into creative output. Many creative people have produced excellent and moving work through states of depression and anxiety. When you're in a low mood, you can express this through writing, putting paint to canvas through music or other creative medium. For instance, Duke Ellington said, "I merely used the energy it took to pout and wrote the blues." Creative expression activates the reward centers of the brain, and you don't need to be the victim of your low moods, but you can use them for creative ends. Finally, we look at the stream brain set. And this is a state where ideas and motor performance seem to flow in a smooth stream without conscious willful control. It's a state that we see in improvisation, in jazz, and in comedy. It's a state associated with flow or being in the zone. Some research indicates that we can get closer to this state, this very desirable state, by practicing mindfulness, being in the moment. So for instance, if you're preparing a meal, just savor each ingredient as you savor the way it looks, the way it smells, and its texture. So these are the 7 brain sets that I think are most salient to human creativity. Now, research indicates that not only do highly creative people prefer to be in brain sets associated with cognitive disinhibition, but they also move more flexibly among the brain sets than those who exhibit lower creativity. And that's important because it allows them to take the novel and original material generated in disinhibited states and process it and organize it in the reason and evaluate brain sets to make it more useful and adaptive. We can learn to move back and forth between brain sets as well. We can practice this. And one of my favorite exercises to practice it, although this is not scientific, is to alternate in 5-minute blocks between solving a crossword puzzle, which activates the reason brain set, and using words from the crossword puzzle to write a mystery story, which activates the connect and the envision brain sets. So in summary, what we've seen from highly creative people is that they generate more creative ideas by matching their brain set to the stage of the creative process at hand and moving flexibly amongst the different brain sets. With practice, we can do this too. And then we can narrow the gap between ordinary performance and creative possibility. Our brains are powerful creative machines, and each of us within that machine has a unique repository of experiences, memories, knowledge, and skills that no one else on the planet has. That means that you can come up with new ideas that no one else in the world can possibly do. I challenge each of you to expand your palette of brain sets, to explore, to invent, to express. In short, to take advantage of the unique and precious resources that dwell within your creative brain. Thank you.